A pleasant good afternoon to you, and welcome to our sixth edition of Health Solutions Made Simple. Today, we are going to be focusing on strokes. I'm sure that you know of someone who have sustained a stroke, and you know how difficult it is in terms of recovery and the financial burden that it places on the individual and their family. Did you know that the World Health Organization has named stroke as the third major cause of death worldwide? And so that is some very, very disturbing statistics. Even right here in Dominica, we've seen the spikes in terms of strokes, particularly relating to cardiovascular health. Now, what is really a stroke? So, a stroke is basically a brain attack which often occurs in one of two ways. So, one, you could have a blocked artery, and two, you could have a ruptured artery. How does it really occur? So, generally, it occurs when something blocks blood supply to parts of the brain, or when a blood vessel in the brain bursts or ruptures. And so you recognize what really happens. All of these activities are happening in the brain. It's important to know too what causes most strokes. So, one, uncontrolled hypertension, high cholesterol levels, high glucose levels, and as well blood clots. So these are the main causes of strokes that we know of. Now there are two main strokes, although there are more than one, practically more than two. But the two main common ones that we see is one, ischemic strokes. And ischemic strokes, basically, they're the most common. And they often occur when blood clots or fat deposits block the blood vessel to the brain. So that's why blood clots, as we said, and as well high cholesterol levels, that's the contribution. These are the two main factors that would cause an ischemic stroke. Whereas we have a hemorrhagic stroke, and that one we hear the word hemo, and that basically relates to blood or blood vessels. So this one basically occurs when an artery in the brain leaks blood or it is ruptured. So we find this one actually happening when blood pressure is very, very high. So you could find that in hypertension, as we said, when the blood pressure gets really, really, really high. So what happens? The leak blood puts a bit too much pressure on the brain cells, and therefore causes those cells to get damaged. And so that is what basically happens with a hemorrhagic stroke. Now, let me just clarify two things, because we've heard of, when we talk about the cardiovascular systems, we talk about the capillaries, we talk about the veins, we talk about the arteries, and so forth. Now, particularly as it relates to the brain, we want to focus on these two main blood vessels. One, the arteries, and basically they are large. So what they really do is that they carry blood away from the heart, and then the veins, which are smaller, they carry blood towards the heart. So these two vessels are very, very important in the discussion of strokes. But we also have a third type of stroke, which is oftentimes called the transient ischemic stroke, or what we would call a mild stroke or a mini stroke. This one is the type that most people will recover from very, very well. You may almost get a 95 to an 85 to 90% total recovery. It is a temporary stroke with noticeable symptoms that can end usually within a 24-hour period. So you would find people saying that the doctor said they had a mild stroke. However, after their investigations, whether it's through blood tests, through imagery, and so forth, they would often be placed on medications and would be given lifestyle modification advices as to what they can do to prevent another stroke from occurring. So let's look at the people who are at risk. Who are at risk to strokes? One, if you are hypertensive and your blood pressure is not properly controlled. So you are one of those people, yes, you might tell yourself, well, the doctor said I have a trace of high blood pressure and I don't really like the medication, so I'm not taking it. And you may not or cannot tell when your blood pressure is high. And so if your blood pressure is uncontrolled, you are at risk. If your glucose levels are uncontrolled, so you're diabetic and your glucose levels keeps on spiking, you are more likely to have a stroke. If you have heart disease, so you have congestive heart failure, you have maybe angina pectoris, you may have cardiomegaly or enlargement of the heart, any of those types of medical conditions that predisposes you to a stroke. As we said, if you suffer with high cholesterol, so your cholesterol levels are very, very high, what we call hyperlipidemia, then that increases you to a stroke. If you are obese, so you are at an obese level, that increases your risk to a stroke. And of course, the very common one, if you are a chronic smoker. So if you're a smoker, you have been smoking for many, many years, whether it's marijuana, whether it's tobacco, once it is smoking, it increases your risk to having a stroke. Now, we want to talk a little about what we can do to prevent any of those strokes from occurring. So the first thing you want to do is manage your blood pressure and your glucose or sugar levels. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring your blood pressure. Have a blood pressure apparatus at home, have a glucose meter at home, so at least you can monitor what your blood pressure and your glucose levels are like. Two, a healthy diet. A diet that is low in sugar, low in salts, low in fats. And when we talk about fats, we are also including the dairy products, the butter, the cheese, those are laden with fats as well. And the processed meats as well. So the sausages, the corned beef, the potted meat, bacon, those types of meat, hams, all of these meats, the processed meats, they are very laden with salt and as well laden with fat. So you want to be cautious in terms of the usage of these types of foods. Um, Definitely regular exercising. And we're talking about cardiovascular health. And so if we're talking about cardiovascular health, we must include exercising. Avoid smoking. And it is one of those social habits that impacts almost all of the body systems, the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the renal system, the digestive system, because your esophagus can get affected by smoking. You can end up getting esophagitis. So it is one of those habits that really compromises all of the main systems of the body. So you really want to avoid smoking. You want to limit your alcohol consumption. I know that generally we have a drink or two, but if it becomes habitual that you almost cannot do without a drink, then that predisposes you to develop, getting a stroke. Maintain a healthy weight. So you want to maintain and you want to manage your weight. And I know it is one that many people struggle with, but it is something that is dealt with um, in a wholesome manner. So when we talk about weight reduction, we talk about weight control, we must get into diet. We must get into sometimes even the psychology of the individual. Is this person overeating because they're stressed out or they're depressed? So it's a multiplicity of factors that must be taken into consideration when we're talking about weight management and weight control. And of course, we have to talk about modifying our lifestyles. And when we talk about modifying our lifestyles, we have to look at the factors that improves our general wellness. And we say that wellness is the house that health sits on. So health is the pillar, wellness is the house. So without wellness, you cannot have health. So wellness basically is the lifestyles, the things that we do. How does our spiritual health, emotional health, physical health, all of these, how do they play a factor in our general health? Our environment as well, our social habits, all of these encompasses our wellness, and so therefore will determine the type of health that we will have and we will maintain. So as we talk about strokes, as I said, strokes are very, very common. Both genders can actually get strokes. And now that you know the different types of strokes, now that you know the risk factors, who is more susceptible to get a stroke, I do hope that you will take better care of yourself and you will take the information at heart. As always, your health is indeed your greatest resource. This program is brought to you by the brand Health and Communications Solutions Limited, based right here in Dominica. Have a good afternoon and continue listening. Remember to share the videos, leave a comment. Your comments are very important. You can let us know the type of shows or topics that you'd want us to address in the comments. Again, thank you so much for listening and do have a wonderful afternoon. Take care. Bye bye.